Yeah, you're welcome once again to the program Breakfast in Africa with the one and only Jingo Kale. Yes, I know everyone is watching TV Africa right now. Yeah, as usual, we have various topics that we handle and sensitive topics on TV Africa. And today we are going to handle and try to peruse, getting the ism of what is affecting Uganda and the entire Africa, which is the locusts. I think you've heard of the locusts affecting Uganda, mainly at the southern part of Uganda. Today, I've hosted someone, again, who is a researcher, who researches on several topics and several things. Is right here to explain to us what is really happening in Uganda and what is happening in Africa concerning the
locusts.
The locusts. Locusts or something else. So locusts actually.
No, the locust
Yes.
is an issue at the moment.
It's the issue.
And
Yeah.
yes, it's mainly Northeast Africa, I should think. Like Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Ethiopia, even Southern Sudan is now being affected.
Southern Sudan.
Is also not so much as Uganda, but it's still also being affected. But it's not just Northeast Africa; it's covering right up to Afghanistan, certain parts of Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Iran, Yemen. So when this locust plague takes place, it covers a vast. It can cover up to 60 countries when a major plague is taking place.
At once.
Yes, and it goes on. The plague can last for 2-3 years or even longer than that. So what we're looking at now is I don't think it's going to go away.
But there's something that I really don't understand clearly. Locusts, I think, existed before, and I see several types of locusts. There's those ones that go to that are in the savannah. You know,
the one they're talking about now is they call it desert.
the
locust.
desert locusts.
Yes.
They are the ones affecting Uganda.
Not just Uganda, Northeast Africa.
Northeast Africa. But currently, Uganda has just received such a situation of being affected by locusts.
No, I think the last major plague
Yes.
was around 1986, between 1986 and 1989 in Uganda.
It was also in Uganda?
Yes. It was,
What, 85?
86 to 89. That was the last major plague in Uganda.
Really?
Yes.
86, 89. So if it was there in 86, 89, how did they handle that plague?
I think the main way of handling plagues
because we look at it as something very, very, very new, you know. For us, those who are born just in 90s, 87, you know, don't know about the locusts. So to look at something that is very new and everyone is scared about
it's not new. There are plagues every, you could say 20 to 30 years. Before 1986, the last one was in the mid-1960s. So plagues happen. They've been happening this last century. Every 20 to 30 years. I think before the 1960s, it was around the 1950s or the 1940s.
But if such things happened in that century, this is a 2020. This is 2020 right now. That we wouldn't expect us to be not prepared for such a thing.
You know, you can never tell when it's going to happen. I think that this most recent plague is, they're saying, because of the rains around the Red Sea, the Indian Ocean, that area has caused a lot of rain in this region, in Northeast Africa and going in the Arab world. So that increase in rain and the dry season that existed prior to that is what brings out the locusts quite a lot.
I've had some researchers saying that these locusts may be engineered. They are not the locusts that existed in the 80s that you talk about. 80s, 70s, 60s, but these ones are very different and they must be engineered. They may be engineered. What would you say about that?
Well, I've not seen any information to concur with that as of yet. It's not impossible that they could have been engineered, but if they're engineered, then they would be looking at...
Yes, because several things have been engineered. Yes, in the agriculture sector. For example, we have seen the weevils being made. Yes, weevils. we've seen different things in the agriculture sector that they say even
to destroy the crops.
Yes,
so they can bring in the GM.
Yeah, they say we have made this insect or this weevil that can kill the other weevil that has been eating such a thing. So don't you think such a thing happened and then the plague came in?
It's possible, but if you look at the record on plagues themselves, you see that they do come in every certain amount of time, every maybe 20 to 30 years or 25 years. So you can't look and say, yes, something's definitely happening in terms of some kind of conspiracy, if the record is already there that plagues happen within that period. So plagues happening now is not really surprising.
I had someone
and
saying,
even the scale is not as bad as there have been plagues in the 90s, but they're not as bad as what is coming up now. The last one that is major is in the 90s.
Coming back to the plague, how does it affect the community?
Of course, the locusts, they eat the crops, they eat the leaves of the plants, the stems of the plant. They can destroy the whole crop, basically.
Any green plant? Any
green plant, as far as I know. So when you have a field, you're growing your crops.
And what is its consumption?
An individual locust can consume its weight of its own, the same weight that it is in a day. And you're talking about locusts which are in their millions. You know, one female locust lays, when it's individual, it can lay something like 150 eggs, but when it's in the swarm, it can lay around 80 eggs. And whenever they land, they lay around 80 eggs, and these eggs can germinate within 2 weeks. And imagine 10 locusts, each laying 80 eggs. And after 2 weeks, now you can imagine the amount of eggs that the locusts that have now formed again. And they become adult within a matter of weeks. Again, so a swarm of 1 million locusts in a few weeks now becomes 20, 30
Don't you think they
million.
can also cause some diseases? Have you found out that? Because the way they multiply is too high, that they may also cause...
I haven't seen anything. The main damage they do is destroy people's food crops. So now, if a locust swarm or plague is in your area for a period of time, then you're going to not have food to eat. Maize farmers, you know, even crops that people use for export, that will be destroyed. You lose your revenue, basically.
So someone had the view and said, why the person who's talking about the engineering of the locusts, he said, with time, we should expect some people coming up and saying, we are going to make something that could eat the locusts, or we are going to make plants that are resistant from the locusts, and this will curb in the GMO thing. What would you say about that?
It will bring in the GMO idea.
Yeah.
Well, I've been looking. There are plants that are made resistant to insects. You have, for example, the BT cotton, which they use in India, and the maize, which they use in America. Those are resistant to the insect plagues that cause problems with those plants. But in terms of locusts, I've not seen anything up yet. It may be in the pipeline. But I think, dealing with locusts, I think, would be much more difficult, really.
Dealing with the locusts.
To find to create a plant that's resistant to a locust.
That's what has happened. Several plants have been engineered according to certain disease or a certain plague or a certain weevil. They say, you know, this is resistant from this weevil, this is this. But again, look at the human health. You realize that it causes harm to humanity.
Because if you look at the banana wilt, you'll find that they're trying to bring in the banana plant, the GM banana plant, into Uganda. I think they're saying by 2022 they want to introduce. It's only this GMO bill that is causing a problem to those people, and it's the farmers themselves.
It has not yet caused the problem because things are still existing. The GMO foods are still moving up and down. You know, supermarkets. You know, so
but to bring it in
the impact is not yet really
bring it in officially. To bring that law into effect officially will mean a greater increase of GM products coming into the country, or the use of GMO seeds. Because like the GMO banana plant is not yet official. People may be growing it somewhere, but once it becomes official, then people can just buy it more freely. Even cassava is also a concern for farmers. Farmers are petitioning. In last, I think it was November or August or November, they petitioned the president, appealing to him to assent to this GMO bill because they want to introduce this GM cassava because there's a form of wilt, cassava mosaic they call it, that it's affecting cassava farmers in the north, and they want to bring in the new so-called new GM crop that they can reap their benefits, so-called financial benefits. So they're appealing to the president to bring in this bill, so the GMO will be official and they can start using. There's also GMO maize which is being grown in just outside Kampala. There's a place. It's guarded, it's fenced off, but they're experimenting.
But the
with
main
GMO
reasoning
maize.
that they give is about that they are resistant from.
They're resistant.
pests,
They bring
diseases and
better.
all that. That's what they say,
And they
which
bring-
is not right.
And they supposedly bring better yield.
Better use, no. I doubt that.
No, there's tests. There are reports or research to be shown that that is not true. You know, they may bring a better yield for 1 or 2 seasons, but then you can see that there's a decline. The yield begins to
The
decline.
word better.
Mm.
How do you look at? How do you understand that word better use? Because when you talk about better use, I believe the test, the numbers, and the resistance should be.
Should be the proof of
Yes.
better use.
So when you look at the test, it's not right.
No, in the testing stage, because
The test is
what I've just been reading about the GM maize, for example, they have 2 plots, one with the GM and the non-GM. The GM plot the non-GM plot is showing maize plants which are wilting, they look very diseased and whatever. And next to it, you have the GM maize plot where the plants they're looking fine, they're looking well.
The GM looks well, then the other one is.
It's looking-
But those are ways of attracting farmers to get to the GMO. But the real proof is that what we were using years back, our fathers, our grandfathers, was the best. Because I told you,
Yes.
we look at the test, we look at the numbers, we look
No,
at
the thing with GMO products like the maize and maybe the cassava is the initial stages of planting. It may look fine.
it
But
may.
may look fine, but when you move on to future seasons, you will find that even the yield starts to decrease, the quality starts to decrease.
Because
And most
you
people are
can't
suspicious
handle the
about
play.
GMO plants because they don't know how that GM experimentation is going to affect the plant in the long term, and how that plant will affect the humans that are eating it in the long term. Because you know when you splice a chromosome and you implant a foreign like genetic element in there, just to make this plant resistant to something, that injecting that genetic element also causes other changes in the plant. It rebalances the chemical structure of the plant, and you're now going to eat that plant. You don't know how that plant is going to affect your health. It may not affect it in the short term, in a few weeks or a few months, but over a longer period of years.
And that's why our argument was that why should you eat something you don't know then?
And that's the argument that people are using.
Yes.
The people who are against GMO products are using that. In the long term, you don't know the problems that it's going to cause. And there have been experiments to show that it can cause problems later on. But these reports are ignored by the mainstream.
So how have they tried to fight the plague?
The plague at the moment, there's not much they can do. The spraying is the most common feature.
Because I saw Uganda got a plane of recent that is supposed to be spraying, and a lot of money was.
And the other problem with spraying as well, those chemicals that you're spraying,
Yes.
they can also cause problems to the health
And,
of
and,
people.
and the community was in fear
Okay.
of the spraying because they had chemicals, they had gadgets. Actually, they are spraying. They had gadgets. They are covering the nose and the body and trying to spray the locusts. But then the people in the community,
Because
you
the same
thought about them.
the same plants that you're spraying to be resistant to locusts are the same plants that people maybe
Yes.
have to eat.
Yes.
So obviously that's going to affect people's health.
Don't you think with time to come, people may get again some different diseases out of that spraying?
Of course,
The
it can
locusts.
cause illnesses to people in the future.
But the government says that they have tested these chemicals.
They've tested the chemicals.
They must have tested the chemicals to come to, to do that.
Well, they may have tested them, but in fact, they don't have much choice in what to use. If they want to get rid of the locusts and save the crops so people can eat, they sometimes may not have a choice but to use that chemical. But in the long term, that same chemical, but then again, the government itself may not know, or they may ignore the evidence that shows that there's damage there to people from the chemicals that they're using.
So there's a lot of question marks
there are a lot of question marks
on what they're using in spraying the plague.
But there are complaints from people from what I've been reading about what the effects of those chemicals would be.
What are the effects? You said you have
No, I'm reading people are complaining, but they haven't named any specific problems yet or health issues.
No victims have been found.
Not yet. In fact, they've just started spraying, so you can't really say that.
Because if a plane, because they got a plane that is spraying the whole. If you get the whole village sprayed by a plane, and you don't know what exactly
those chemicals are.
Yes, the chemicals.
No, anytime you can, especially in the younger children. You can find that, and the elderly, you can find there'll be problems there to their health.
So how would you advise the governments, all the countries that are affected? What advice would you give them?
Affected, if you're going to spray, make sure you use, I'm sure there are organic type sprays you can use, because I was reading something about an organic spray.
Organic spray?
Not created, it's like organic fertilizer. You have fertilizer, this factory-made fertilizer, which people say is not necessarily good for the soil. But then you have, even here in Uganda, there's organically made fertilizer from decomposed elements. You can make a fertilizer from that. It's the same with this chemicals used for spraying. I'm sure there's an organic way. You can produce something made organically that can be used to spray on the plants that won't cause damage to the people that consume those plants.
So here, right now, you said spraying should be organic.
Yes, most probably.
Should be organic, so that we can try to save people's lives. Because we don't know the outcome.
Because factory-made things are not always good. Even factory-made Western medicine, where they make tablets and whatever. There's always problems with those, as opposed to natural medicine, which is better for your health.
You can stay tuned on TV Africa. It has been the program Breakfast in Africa. Stay tuned.